friends. I hope y'all all had a nice weekend. I'm happy to be back with you and I can't wait for our Zoom call tomorrow to catch up with all of you and see how you're doing. And we are continuing on with The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe today. We are on the second part of chapter 12. And on Friday in our reading, the beavers and the three children finally made it to where? Who remembers? To the stone table, that's right. And who did they see when they got there? Aslan, yes. And it talked about something interesting that I thought was, how do you think they were feeling? They were about to walk up. We're gonna start where they're walking up to meet Aslan for the very first time. How do you think they were feeling at that moment? Well, it's kind of interesting. So something that I want to remind you of from our reading on Friday was, do you remember how it said the children didn't know until that moment that something could be good and terrible at both the same time? So let's think about the ways that Aslan might be good, right? He created the world of Narnia. He's the king of Narnia. We know that he is a good ruler and wants the best for all the people and the creatures that live in Narnia. But how might he be terrible? That's the interesting part. Well, what kind of animal is he? He's a lion. Lions can be pretty scary, can't they? He's big and he's ferocious and he's willing to fight for his country. So maybe that's what they mean when they say that Aslan was good and terrible all at the same time. So how do you think they felt getting ready to meet this big lion? Maybe excited, maybe nervous, maybe a little bit scared. We don't know. Let's find out. So we're picking up from right when the children are about to walk up to meet Aslan. Susan, whispered Peter, what about you? Ladies first. No, you're the eldest, whispered Susan. And of course, the longer they went on doing this, the more awkward they felt. Then at last, Peter realized that it was up to him. He drew his sword and raised it to the salute and hastily saying to the others, come on, pull yourselves together. He advanced to the lion and said, we have come, Aslan. Welcome, Peter, son of Adam, said Aslan. Welcome, Susan and Lucy, daughters of Eve. Welcome, he-beaver and she-beaver. His voice was deep and rich and somehow took the fidgets right out of them. They now felt glad and quiet, and it didn't seem awkward to them to stand and say nothing. But where is the fourth? Asked Aslan. He's tried to betray them and join the White Witch, O Aslan, said Mr. Beaver. And then something made Peter say, that was partly my fault, Aslan. I was angry with him, and I think that helped him to go wrong. And Aslan said nothing either to excuse Peter or to blame him, but merely stood looking at him with his great, unchanging eyes. And it seemed to all of them that there was nothing to be said. Please, Aslan, said Lucy, can anything be done to save Edmund? All shall be done, said Aslan, but it may be harder than you think. And then he was silent again for some time. Up to that moment, Lucy had been thinking how royal and strong and peaceful his face looked. Now it suddenly came into her head that he looked sad as well. But the next minute, that expression was quite gone. The lion shook his mane and clapped his paws together. Terrible paws, thought Lucy, if he didn't know how to velvet them, and said, meanwhile, let the feast be prepared. Ladies, take these daughters of Eve to the pavilion and minister to them. When the girls had gone, Aslan laid his paw, and though it was velveted, it was very heavy. Laid it on Peter's shoulder and said, come, son of Adam, and I will show you a far-off sight of the castle where you are to be king. And Peter, with his sword still drawn in his hand, went with the lion to the eastern edge of the hilltop. There, a beautiful sight met their eyes. The sun was setting behind their backs. That meant that the whole country below them lay in the evening light, forest and hills and valleys, and winding away like a silver snake, the lower part of the great river. And beyond all this, miles away, was the sea. And beyond the sea, the sky, full of clouds, which were just turning rose color with the reflection of the sunset. But just where the land of Narnia met the sea, in fact, at the mouth of the great river, there was something on a little hill, shining. It was shining because it was a castle, and of course the sunlight was reflected from all the windows which looked toward Peter in the sunset. But to Peter, it looked like a great star resting on the seashore. "That, O man," said Aslan, "is Cair Paravel of the 4 thrones, in one of which you must sit as king. I show it to you because you are the firstborn, and you will be high king over all the rest." And once more Peter said nothing, for at that moment a strange noise woke the silence suddenly. It was like a bugle, but richer. "It is your sister's horn," said Aslan to Peter in a low voice, so low as to be almost a purr, as if it is not disrespectful to think of a lion as purring. For a moment, Peter did not understand. Then, when he saw all the other creatures start forward and heard Aslan say with a wave of his paw, "Back, let the prince win his spurs," did he understand, and set off running as hard as he could to the pavilion, and there he saw a dreadful sight. The naiads and dryads were scattering in every direction. Lucy was running toward him as fast as her short legs would carry her, and her face was as white as paper. Then he saw Susan make a dash for a tree and swing herself up, followed by a huge gray beast. At first, Peter thought it was a bear. Then he saw that it looked like an Alastair, though it was far too big to be a dog. Then he realized that it was a wolf. A wolf standing on its hind legs with its front paws against the tree trunk, snapping and snarling. All the hair on its back stood up on end. Susan had not been able to get higher than the second big branch. One of her legs hung down so that her foot was only an inch or 2 above the snapping teeth. Peter wondered why she did not get higher, or at least take a better grip. Then he realized that she was just going to faint, and that if she fainted, she would fall off. Peter did not feel very brave. Indeed, he felt like he was going to be sick. But that made no difference to what he had to do. He rushed straight up to the monster and aimed a slash of his sword at its side. That stroke never reached the wolf. Quick as lightning, it turned around, its eyes flaming and its mouth wide open in a howl of anger. If it had not been so angry that it simply had to howl, it would have got him by the throat at once. As it was, though all this happened too quickly for Peter to think at all, he had just time to duck down and plunge his sword as hard as he could between the brute's forelegs and into its heart. Then came a horrible, confused moment like something in a nightmare. He was tugging and pulling, and the wolf seemed neither alive nor dead, and its bared teeth knocked against his forehead, and everything was blood and heat and hair. A moment later, he found that the monster lay dead, and he had drawn his sword out of it and was straightening his back and rubbing the sweat off his face and out of his eyes. He felt tired all over. Then, after a bit, Susan came down the tree. She and Peter felt pretty shaky when they met, and I won't say there wasn't hugging and crying on both sides. But in Narnia, no one thinks any the worse of you for that. "Quick, quick," shouted the voice of Aslan. "Centaurs, eagles, I see another wolf in the thickets. There, behind you. He has just darted away. After him, all of you. He will be going to his mistress. Now is your chance to find the witch and rescue the 4th son of Adam." And instantly, with a thunder of hooves and beating of wings, and a dozen or so of the swiftest creatures disappeared into the gathering darkness. Peter, still out of breath, turned and saw Aslan close at hand. "You have forgotten to clean your sword," said Aslan. It was true. Peter blushed when he looked at the bright blade and saw it all smeared with the wolf's hair and blood. He stooped down and wiped it clean on the grass, and then wiped it quite dry on his coat. "Hand it to me and kneel, son of Adam," said Aslan. And when Peter had done so, he struck him with the flat of the blade and said, "Rise up, Sir Peter Wolfsbane, and whatever happens, never forget to wipe your sword." Okay, my friends, we will stop there for today. That was the end of the chapter. Our next chapter is chapter 13, and it's called Deep Magic from the Dawn of Time. And I will see you tomorrow.